Hello YouTube, this is Boston Best 407. This is going to be an addendum to my last video. I felt like I hadn't explained everything that I wanted to say, or rather that I rushed through everything. So I'm going to try to just comment on some of my points, particularly near the end, and try to explain in more detail what I meant by some of the things I was saying. So, because I was trying to cram everything within a 15-minute video, and that just didn't work out, and I felt like I was jumpy and hyper when I was with what I was saying, and I wasn't really, but I decided to post it anyway. But so anyway, now that I have unlimited time, I'm not going to have that problem anymore. So just to recap briefly, I was talking about this anthropological idea of human life, human existence, human civilization, whatever you want to call it. Really of life in general, because it can apply to any. It could comply to any social animal. So that was like 4 spheres of life, and there's like a social sphere, economic sphere, political sphere, cultural sphere, and I ordered that in that way for a very particular reason. And the social sphere refers to really the running of what you might call a base biological function, reproduction specifically. And some of those kind of relations we have with each other, like male and female, that applies to the rest of the tribe. And the mating process occurs in order to best decide who gets to, or how it goes about. And then you have like the economic sphere, economy, which is which it really has to do with resources, survival, that kind of thing, and how we survive, how we are able to provide for the things that we need in order to, like I said, in order to survive. Then there's the political sphere, which is just really structures that evolve within the tribe in order to best, really to divide up the spoil. And so that's really seen in, for example, the best hunters, get to lead the society, that sort of thing. The alpha males, whatever you want to think of it. And then that just evolves into today. So it seems like all living organisms, all social animals, well, not all living organisms, but social animals specifically, seem to have this. And if we look at animals, they have some sort of rudimentary, society, economy, political structures. You find that some of them are even very sophisticated compared to us. And I mean, like, for example, you got the alpha male, gamma male. I was reading about wolves, and you hear about alpha, beta, and omega males, but then you got gamma males, and just a lot of different things. So a lot of the animals actually have a very sophisticated kind of life, and of course we're the most sophisticated of all. But we don't have structures like that because we don't live in tribes anymore. But we have our own sophisticated. We have we're like domesticated now. So anyway, so there's that, and then culture, and how I think of culture is really us subscribing meaning to all those other spheres of our life, which is why I put it at the end. Even though people would probably put culture next to society, socio-cultural versus political, economic. But I would put it at the end because I think for us, animals don't really have, they have a culture, in a rudimentary sense, but they don't really have a culture the way we do. For example, art and music, that's culture. We use art and music to subscribe meaning to our lives and to show man what he is, in a manner of speaking. So that's the basic idea, this basic anthropological idea I came up with. And then, of course, how does that relate to politics? What is politics? What is political ideology? That kind of thing. And ideology, political ideology, the purpose of it is to decide, or is to have a sense of a program for how you do this, or how this kind of thing tends to occur. And so that's why we have that's why we would have that's why we engage in politics, or why we have a political ideology. Why the concept even exists? Because animals don't have political ideology. In the way we do. So what does that mean? Of course, and I think it can be we can divide up politics into two temperaments, conservative and liberal, two attitudes basically, within the various areas. So when it comes to, for example, those four spheres again, we could say that a political ideology refers to how we go about one of these different areas, these different spheres of our lives. And so, you have, for example, social conservatism or social liberalism, and everything, economic conservatism, economic liberalism, political conservatism, political liberalism, cultural conservatism, cultural liberalism, blah, blah, blah. I explained that already. So these two attitudes, and so, this personifies, or this manifests itself in the concept of left and right. Right typically being conservative, left being liberal. And this is not a very good sketch because there's many different variations and many different manners of thinking. You have, for example, and it also changes in culture. So what's right wing or rather conservative in one country can be left wing or liberal in another. It really depends on the circumstances. So it's a very relative concept to a large degree, and so from there you also have what might be called a third way or center politics, which is people who feel, who look at it and feel to themselves that either side doesn't really reflect how they're feeling, so they blend the two. And I'm one of them. I'm like a walking contradiction. I feel different ways about a lot of different things. But how do you formulate that into an ideology? For example, I remember there was a joke by Chris Rock where you're saying, I'm conservative on something, I'm liberal on others. Everybody wants to be part of a gang. Well, that's how people are. People want to be part of a gang. They want to have some loyalty to something. At least I know I'm like that in many ways. So I want to come up with an ideology to describe myself. And this is what this synthesis I'm talking about is. So what is that synthesis? It's, like I said, a center. It's third way. But it's different than a lot of other manners of thinking because people many times will divide up something like, they'll say they're socially liberal, economically conservative. It works well. I want to own property. I want to pursue material wealth. I also want to have sex with who I want, put whatever I want in my body. So people become a libertarian in that sense. Libertarianism can really be thought of as being socially liberal but economically conservative. So that's that. But me, I've always felt like I was the opposite of that. So I was more socially conservative but economically liberal. That is, I'm more within the manner of thinking of, I tend to agree more with the right on socio-cultural type issues. And I tend to agree with the left more on economics. I'm not really a strong believer in free market capitalism or whatever, It's for a long time I was more like I like the New Deal, for example, which made me think maybe I was a conservative Democrat, in that sense. But that's probably like the Democratic Party is probably the closest. The conservative faction of the Democratic Party may be the closest to what I feel here in the United States. But for myself, to formulate what I'm thinking, I'm going to start off by describe my views on socio-cultural issues. First of all, I would say that I'm not really socially conservative exactly. I'm culturally conservative, but socially liberal. That means I believe in a traditional culture. I believe in traditional conventions, customs, various things like that, and heritage and all that other kind of stuff, But I tend to also think that people should be left alone to do what they want, more or less. So I'm rather libertarian when it comes to social issues. That seems like a contradiction to most people. People think being socially conservative is fighting the cultural war. That was a slogan in the 90s that a lot of right-wingers use. It's personified by people like Pat Buchanan, for example, or what was it, Bill O'Reilly. We got to fight the cultural war. But that's kind of counterproductive to a large degree, I think. And because I'll tell you a little story. I was talking to my mother about this the other day, and she told me a story about someone she knew who was a Christian, who was socially conservative, thought Christianity was about living morally, that kind of thing. And her children, this woman's children, today are, very liberal. And this is what I'm talking about. social conservatism leads to cultural liberalism. And what I mean by cultural liberalism is, just self-indulgence, just a belief in self-indulgence, a belief in nothing, nothing of belief. It's what happens when you have something forced down your throat. So when you let people be free to make their own choices, to a large degree, people will, go along with it. They will want to embrace a common identity. If you believe that's important, then you have to allow people to go that way. You have to allow. Why was society cultural, or rather, agrarian societies, for example, traditionally, culturally conservative, traditional societies? Why were they the way they are? Was it because they forced everything down people's throat? Maybe you can make that argument. But really, I would see it as the fact that people felt an investment in the tribe. They felt an investment in their tribe. So that's what I'm thinking. I can say I'm culturally conservative, but I can say that I still think people should be left alone to do what they want. I have no problem with people using drugs or drinking or screwing who they want. It doesn't matter to me, because I think if the culture is conservative, people will be conservative. If they're not forced to feel like they have to be loyal to that, they will choose it on their own, I think. That's my personal view. So I could say I'm culturally conservative but socially liberal. Now, the economic sphere, the political sphere, this other side of it becomes a little bit more complex, because it's not really a cut and dry issue between right and left. I kind of said I was a socialist or something. I didn't really mean that. But probably more correct to say I'm a corporatist when it comes to economics. Something along those lines. And I don't mean that I'm for corporations, because people confuse that. People think, you're for corporations. No. I favor a third way between capitalism and communism, or whatever, because those are the two differences. I mean, it's like state socialism, i.e. communism, and then capitalism, and there's no other area. And this leads me to almost sound like a neo-fascist or something, because fascism, and that kind of thing was like that. But I don't want people to think that. It's not what I'm saying. But you always have to be careful, because people will assume you're saying something you're actually not saying. But this is what I mean. I favor what was something like the New Deal, for example. And the New Deal was corporatist. The New Deal was economic fascism. And libertarians and free marketers, will go against that. What they would say about how horrible that was. Roosevelt was a fascist, all this kind of stuff. But the New Deal had that going for it. And it had some positive features, I think. And I'm also a protectionist. That is, I believe in favor economic nationalism. I believe in favor, America only products or whatever, which isn't the same as saying that I'm against other people's products. But I think we should build up on a manufacturing base. Every country has pursued protectionism as a way to build up their economy. So this is how we got a manufacturing base, which was destroyed by free trade policies. So I'm opposed to free trade policies, strongly opposed to free trade policies. Even if I would accept an industrial capitalist type of order, not a New Deal, a relatively free market such as what exists in the 19th century. I mean, by the way, relatively free, because there was still kind of involvement in the economy. The government was still involved in the economy, but didn't have the welfare program. So if I could trade one for the other, if I had, for example, a kind of if I didn't have that liberal thing, the liberal welfare kind of situation, which I'm also going to point out that I'm not exactly for. I'm not exactly for that, in that way. Although I believe what existed with the New Deal was very positive. Some of what it became later proved itself to be very negative. And I actually, in many ways, agree with libertarians that there's too much government, all that kind of stuff. I believe that the welfare system has been a complete disaster. I think it's a very problematic thing. I think it's created a permanent underclass, society more or less, generations on welfare. And it's hurt the same people it said it's supposed to protect. It's very, very, very unfortunate situation with the way we go about managing this. So those are the two ideas. And the New Deal, by the way, was in many ways protectionist. But maybe I'll do a video on dealing with the details of that. But if I had to trade one or the other, like if I had to have one or the other, nevertheless, that's my views on economics. I believe there should be some strong, healthy balance between the interests of private property, things like that, and the economy. That is, or not the economy, rather the government. That is, the government has every role and every right to come into the situation to ensure that there are positive outcomes for the community. And I believe, and this leads me to talk about my views on politics. That is, political structures. When I say politics, this is all politics, but when I say politics, specifically I'm saying political structures. And my view on political structures, I believe that the role of the government is to maintain society. That is, it's there to maintain, to regulate, to ensure the welfare of the people, to, how would you say it, manage or administrate for the good of the community. The purpose of public life, of the government, is to do this. It's not to become an activist government. It's not to come in and try to think that we're going to change the world using government. This is a flawed, modern, liberal conception of government, which is not the way it is. And within this context, I do not believe that the role of government is to ensure things like equality, pursuing, social engineering and things like that. That's really not the role of government. The government has no role in doing that kind of thing. How that should go about is really among individuals. It's really a culture or socio-cultural type of thing. And this leads me why I would say I'm socially liberal. For example, issues of gay people, for example. I'm not opposed to gay people. I don't have any problems with gay people at all. I actually sympathize with the way gay people get treated in society, particularly gay men. I'm not against them. But the process of this also leads to things like my views on gender, whatever. The process of how that goes about when the government gets involved in it, and this also leads to issues of race. Any issue among people, when the government is not doing what it's supposed to do, when it's trying to initiate cultural or social change within the larger society, it becomes problematic. The thing is, people will change naturally. People will embrace, better ideals over time as the needs of the moment begin to change. If we left people alone in this area, the positive results that we want will happen. And I was planning to do a video at one point. I still plan to do it when I get a chance, which I was planning to call "How Social Movements Retard Our Progress." And what I was basically going to argue is that you really don't need a feminism, a gay rights movement, or whatever the hell, to advocate for things like equality or whatever among people, or people to be treated fairly or equally. You don't need any of these things. They retard our progress because they force change in areas where people would change naturally. There's no reason to hate gay people. There's no reason to want to brutalize gay people or whatever. If people feel negative about that over time, and when they finally learn that gay people are not these amoral animals, but they're just human beings like the rest of us. They just happen to have a different orientation or a different sexual taste than the rest of us, or whatever the case may be. That's okay, but it's not the job of government to do that, and it's also not the job of government, like I said, to pursue equality. It just becomes destructive and damaging. So I have a conservative conception of what the government is supposed to do and what its purpose is. It has a very specific objective purpose, and it should carry out that purpose. We should have a rule of law. We should follow things like the Constitution. In this area, I'm very conservative. I would favor, because what we have, the Constitution, and I say I'm not bothered by saying that. And that's just really that. And also, this relates to my views on national sovereignty, and that I'm opposed to the destruction of national sovereignty. I'm a strong believer in the concept and the principles of national sovereignty. That is, I believe that people, the same way individuals should be left alone, countries should all be allowed to have their own development. I'm really admittedly opposed to the United Nations. I don't like the United Nations. I don't like the any body, or like the World Bank or the IMF or whatever, with the principle of interfering with other countries. And this is one of the reasons why I'm anti-capitalist, but not from a Marxist or socialist or left-wing perspective. I'm more of a more of an anti-capitalist in a more conservative sense, in that these groups destroy national culture, or they will interfere with it if something threatens their interest. So they want a cosmopolitan type of society. They don't like cultural. They don't like cultural. A culture that is traditional, wants to be left alone. Basically, capitalism does this, and it's ironic. This is just as an aside. Karl Marx actually talked about this, and there's a quote from Karl Marx somewhere, really great quote actually, in which he talked about this in the Communist Manifesto. The only problem with Marxists, obviously, is that they want to move forward. They want to just just want to increase that process to the point of a point of oblivion almost. So anyway, this is my addendum. It's kind of long, but I think I finally made my views as plain as I possibly can, or rather, hopefully this makes sense, and just a more expansatory. I thought that's even a word, and. Anyway, that's that, and I hope I made sense. I hope anyone who watches this can get some value for it. And I'll talk more about some of these issues and some of my opinions in more detail at a later point. And maybe I didn't make everything clear, and I'll have to modify or explain more a little bit later. And that's it. So I'll talk to you later. Bye.